Good morning, St. Francis, and good morning, people of God. It is Tuesday, the 13th day of February 2024, Tuesday of the 6th week of the year, the 6th week in Ordinary Time. This is our final day of Winter Ordinary Time, and because it is the Tuesday right before Ash Wednesday, it is Mardi Gras. It is our last day of Carnival. Carnival began on Epiphany, in which we celebrated the wonder and the glory of the Incarnation within us, within our midst, a celebration that just did not end. And so now we come to the conclusion of that as we begin the Lenten journey tomorrow. And so I am decked out for Mardi Gras. Here we have just concluded morning prayer here at our school, the Franciscan School, and now just getting ready to celebrate the rest of the day with joy and wonder for, again, what God has given us and the ability to live and to share life and love and friendship with one another. So our readings that conclude Winter Ordinary Time today and for Mardi Gras, really the first reading from James. Again, we are in the letter of James. We will return to the letter of James after Easter at the end of May, but where we leave off with James today is a discussion about temptation and the understanding again that God does not tempt in the same way that God would lead us to do wrong, that God leads us to do harm. It does not say either that the devil tempts. So again, it's very interesting with the early church trying to understand itself, and concepts that we have today are not necessarily what the early church understood, things like that. Temptation comes because of desires that are left unchecked and are not necessarily very good for us. But the whole idea, again, behind temptation and, again, what to do with it, is that God uses it, though, as a way in which to better understand ourselves. You know, it's like, why are we tempted? Because God loves us to fail. God loves us to be sad and depressed about our failures. No, God allows us to be tested because that's what a temptation is, to be able to understand ourselves better. And hopefully from that understanding grow in knowing what it is that we can and cannot do, and focus more about those things that we can do, again, that bring life, that bring wonder, that bring joy to the lives of others. And so an important perhaps message for us to have as we conclude Winter Ordinary Time and get ready for our Lenten journey is that all those times that we are tested are not to be defeatist, or not to defeat us, but to allow us to understand ourselves more and more as the wonder and beauty of God in our midst, and to choose those things that allow that wonder and beauty of God in our midst to shine forth. The reading for today, the gospel for today it's ridiculous. It's a complicated word game that Jesus is playing with the apostles, and you wonder even why it was recorded and how anybody makes sense of it. And so this last time that we'll hear from Mark's gospel in this way, we will hear from Mark's gospel in Lent. But this part of Mark's gospel, the apostles have no bread, I guess, and so they're looking for bread for their food, for their meal, because bread is a staple, and a staple in Semitic cooking and Jewish cooking, what have you. But they have no bread, and it's kind of get in the way perhaps of enjoying the meal. And then Jesus pipes in and says, beware of the leaven of the scribes and Pharisees and of Herod and everybody else like that. Okay, well, leaven goes into bread, and they don't know why Jesus said that, and they think that's because they have no bread. Jesus is saying these things, and then Jesus goes off on this tangent about, are your hearts hardened? Do you not understand? And then recaps the feeding of the 5,000, which happened a couple of verses before. And it's like, you've got to learn and you've got to understand and these kinds of things. And so why go off on this tangent, it seems, when the lack of bread for the meal seemed to have been the issue? Well, perhaps, again, in some ways, what, Jesus is, again, trying to get at, is the sense that it isn't just, bread that lacks in our lives at times, that there are other things that are lacking in our lives. And it's like, and why does that lack exist? Why does that lack persist in our life of those things that we sometimes need? And it's because we are not focused correctly on what it is that we need. And things that seem to be lacking in our life might not necessarily be something that's lacking, but something that we just may not need at all. And so trying to understand, what are our needs and how best to meet our needs are those kinds of pursuits, again, that we as believers, should be concerned with, more so than just the things that kind of pass and are just nuisances in our lives. We are not to be undone by the nuisances in our lives, and never allow the nuisances to become more than what they are. And so maybe that's what Jesus is getting at. Dinner was not ruined because there was no bread, but do not let the lack of bread, distort, what's truly important for us to believe and to understand, and allow us to become the people that God needs us to be. So on this last day of Winter Ordinary Time before our Lenten journey, St. Francis and people of God, may the Lord give you his peace.